Trust Lola to get involved with the hockey guy of all people, he tuts, checking his mirrors before turning onto our road. At least Rothwell isn't a total jackass. Why is the bar set at isn't a jerk? It shouldn't be. Hello and welcome to Connotation Points video, Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books, discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 9. They start getting kind of hot and heavy. Despite her best intention to stay away from him, Anastasia found him handsome in his tuxedo and found it endearing that he was checking out on his party all night. He asks if she's sure, and she makes another tasteless joke about drawing him a map. It wasn't all that funny in the previous chapter, and repeating it now, all it's only making it worse. I don't joke about consent, Anastasia. This is the bare minimum here. I've been reading too many of those billionaire romances where the male lead introduces himself to the female by assaulting her. The bar should not be this far underground. Anyway, he gets her off with his mouth, but the entire thing barely lasts a page. I know that we're on page 75 of 380, but come on. While the narration doesn't exactly come out and say that, Anastasia has some regrets. The fact that she immediately ran away and avoided all contact with Nate moving forward, yeah, I'd say that there were a few regrets. A few days later, Lola wakes Anastasia and Ryan up. Although Anastasia insists that the benefits of their friendship have stopped now that he's with Olivia, the two of them still fell asleep together last night watching a movie. Lola gives Anastasia a big box and says that their presents that must be open on video call, so she calls up her own boyfriend who is with JJ and Nate. The presents are the team hockey jerseys with Lola's and Anastasia's surnames printed on the back, which... Look, you can get your own girlfriend as many of these she's mine presents as you want. It's honestly a little weird that Nate gave this to Anastasia. One oral act does not somehow constitute a relationship, especially an act that resulted in the receiver running away and avoiding all contact for a week. Like, dude, take a hint. Right before they end the video chat, Henry shows up and asks, "Is that Anastasia? I thought she was avoiding you, Nathan." This obviously leads to Lola demanding to know why Anastasia has been avoiding Nate. However, she seems to act like Anastasia's avoidance of Nate is somehow new, rather than something that she's been doing since finding out about the destruction of the generator. Anastasia then says something that I cannot possibly make up. I will make 0 attempts to actually say this out loud, since it's freaking ridiculous. This is a published novel, y'all. Don't get me wrong, because I also have a tiny history of not using the space key in order to highlight and emphasize the rush of words, but I was also like 15, and I 100% promise you that there are ways to get this across without it taking 2 minutes for the reader to decipher. This is seriously up there with those authors who insist upon writing out thick accents. However, since that was a jumbled and incoherent mess, Anastasia then repeats herself slower, which, then why did you write that to begin with? It was an accident. Yes, my coincidentally naked lady bits accidentally came into contact with Nate's mouth where he accidentally got me off. Anastasia hadn't been wearing underwear, so that really was a coincidence. Anastasia then proceeds to give them a detailed play-by-play, as if this is the first time the reader opened the book and happened to start reading on this exact page. Lola and Ryan are more disappointed that she failed to tell them about this. Lola and Ryan also insist that Anastasia is dumb for not having gone all the way with him, and as much as it pains me to say this, they kind of have a point. They encourage her to hook back up with him to do this, for science. Chapter 10. We jump back to Nate the moment right after he finished getting Anastasia off. He swears that he'd never seen anybody run so fast in his life. He was confused and hurt by that, and even more so in the days that followed. When she'd see him, she'd turn and all but run in the opposite direction. He wondered if it wasn't because she had a boyfriend, especially after the video chat where Ryan was in her bed. But he thought that she wasn't like that, a feeling that was solidified when he saw Ryan being physically close with Olivia. I've decided today is the day we're going to talk it out. She's good at communicating her feelings. She's proved that a few times. Buddy, I don't know how to explain to you that running away whenever she sees you is a screamed message. But then again, maybe if you were thinking with your upstairs head instead of the downstairs, you would understand this. The narration then slams on the brakes as it soars violently into talking some more about Nate's terrible father that he's been calling nonstop since the party, but Nate has been ignoring the calls, thinking that his dad is calling to complain about all the money Nate spent on Robbie's party. He also spent some time telling us that Mr. and Mrs. H, aka Robbie's parents, are more like his actual parents than his terrible father, and it's not so much that I don't necessarily care about somebody finding better replacement parents than the one assigned to him by nature. My problem is that the narration came to a screeching halt simply so that it could tell us this. Again. Anyway, while we're in pies, I need to talk about something that's been bugging the shoot out of me. Anastasia's name, or rather, her nickname. I know what you're thinking, that I've been calling her Anastasia this entire time. What nickname? She says that she likes to go by Stassi, which my mind has been kind of auto-corrected into Stacy, which I feel like should tell you everything that you need to know about how much that I hate it if my mind has inserted a more suitable name in its place. Well, that and the fact that I've been refusing to call her that this entire time. Like, I get that the protagonist of the 50 Shades series was named Anastasia, and she went by Anna, but Anya was right there, or if you didn't want to associate yourself with the Don Bluth movie, you could, I don't know, name her literally anything else. Trying to force a nickname onto the readers has been physically painful, especially when everybody else shortens it to, stats. Anyway, jumping back into the book, I've turned the page and found my absolute favorite thing ever. 2 pages that have been taken up by bizarre formatting. Today, it's text messages. Why do people find this necessary? The only consolation here is that there aren't freaking email headers and footers here. Looking at you, 50 Shades. Ugh. Not only is this a waste of 2 pages, but it's also kind of unreadable. The author is clearly trying to do the formatting like most messengers these days, with your own messages being on the right and everybody else's on the left. However, at least in my PDF, there aren't any physical distinctions between each message, so that makes it difficult to follow. However, I find that none of this matters much, since this entire conversation, seriously, is a waste of everybody's time, including the author for having formatted it like this to begin with, and whatever misfortunate editor had to freaking format it for publishing. Robbie starts off by saying that Anastasia and Lola live in the same building as Kitty. However, this goes nowhere quickly, much to my dismay, especially since he started off the conversation with, "I'm dead." Instead of explaining to literally anybody the significance of finding out Kitty lives in the same building, quickly devolves into flat out explaining that Anastasia seems to prefer the basketball players, which Henry knows because he asked her once. Why is beyond anybody's guess, but here we are. I also asked casual friends what their romantic preferences are. Said nobody. Ever. Getting back to the actual plot, Nate is determined to catch Anastasia so that they can have an actual conversation about what happened. However, he gets to the ring 20 minutes early and catches her and Aaron in the middle of their own rehearsal. The narration continues to annoy us with frequent stops and pauses everything so that it can describe what they look like when on the ice. And don't get me wrong, because I think that figure skating is super pretty, but wow, the written description of it is simply not it. Seriously. In a book that's already bogged down for random background characters and their drama, and a chapter that's already been pumping the brakes to tell us about Nate not taking his dad's calls and about a pointless text conversation between the entire hockey team, pausing yet again to describe how elegant and pretty that figure skating is for an entire page is simply yet another benchmark of terrible writing in this book. However, in the end of what I assume is the dreaded quadruple lutz, Anastasia slams into one of the ring boards. Nate tells the readers that he slammed into the board often enough in full hockey gear. Anastasia is wearing leggings and a crop top. Aubrey tells her that they're going to turn the quadruple into a triple, which she's apparently quite good at. However, this sets Anastasia off and she starts to cry about the entire thing, insists that she can do it, but she simply flubbed the entire thing. Before this can go further, they all realize that Anastasia is bleeding from the head. Nate insists that he has first aid training, which is stupid considering that it's a legal requirement that all teachers have first aid training as well. I don't know about figure skating coaches, but since Aubrey is technically an employee at the university, I assume that she has to undergo the same kind of training as any regular teacher. But we gotta have a romance, as contrived and forced as it may be. We spend a freaking half page with him simply carrying her into another room. He tends to her, but also encourages her to go to the hospital to get checked out, and above all else, to rest. She insists that she can't do any of that because she has a competition that weekend. Which, hey, everything else has been highlighting how toxic these subcultures are, so we might as well talk about how sports culture forces you to ignore injuries until they get so bad that the person collapses. Anyway, Aaron comes in a second later and Nate tells him to take Anastasia to the hospital. Despite agreeing to do so, I get the impression that the only reason Aaron cares is simply because without his skating partner, Aaron would be up the proverbial creek without a paddle. When Nate rejoins Robbie, his friend laughs over the idea that Anastasia would rather give herself a concussion than talk to him. Chapter 11. And Aaron and Anastasia go to their competition where we're told that they pass on to the next round. Anastasia was so anxious about the entire thing that she felt like throwing up. All of this was straight up told to us in the most boring way possible. And while yes, it is insanely bad writing, I find that I don't mind too much. We're on page 89 of 380. A little bit of brevity where we can is probably stopping this from stretching out into 400, 500 pages. Then there's a section where we're told that Aubrey is confused as to how Anastasia never managed to go so far in her skating career until she got to university. Anastasia claims that her former skate partner, James, was the one who'd been holding her back, but she refused to switch because she was apparently in love with him. Which also answers a question that I had previously. What's stopping Anastasia from dropping Aaron as her partner and switching to somebody who's maybe a little bit less toxic? Apparently, literally nothing. Moving forward, if Anastasia complains about having Aaron as her partner, I'm going to refer back to this fact. She chose this. As the two of them go their separate ways after the competition, Anastasia gets a text from Lola, who chose watching the hockey game over watching figure skating. She calls Nate your man, even though by this point Anastasia has a better relationship with literally every other player on the team, including Robbie. This book is so heavy-handed about the fact that Nate and Anastasia is going to be endgame, and for no actual reason. Trust Lola to get involved with the hockey guy of all people he tuts, checking his mirrors before turning onto our road. At least Rothwell isn't a total jackass. Why is the bar set that isn't a jerk? It shouldn't be. Anastasia is quick to point out that Lola's relationship is none of their business. However, Aaron is quick to say it will be when she gets knocked up and ghosted. I'm sorry, but where the frick paddywhack is this even coming from? This is so bizarre and out of left field that not even Anastasia has anything to say in response to this. I'm trying to look out for you, Stassi. I care about you. We're partners. That goes beyond skating. I know you do the same for me. This is a huge instance of do as I say, not as I do. Because not once in the chapters leading up to this have I ever once actually thought that Aaron cared for Anastasia beyond a means to getting his couple's figure skating dreams. Especially when you factor in the stuff like him demanding that she endure an eating disorder for his sake. However, you know it's bad whenever Anastasia doubts his words. Whenever he has these violent, mean moods, she wonders if she even knows him at all. Lola comes home a bit drunk following the game. She says that she'll start getting ready after a micro nap, but then refuses to wake up later, as the two of them get into an Uber to go clubbing, which is a really long aside about the specific club. I don't care about any of that. Lola teases Anastasia mercilessly about how she allowed Nate to get her off and then ran away. Anastasia has also decided to actually give Nate a clean slate, which is probably for the best since I'm still confused over why she was so angry at him. I'm most excited to see Henry at this point. I don't feel like the statement requires explanation. Why does Anastasia have more actual chemistry with Henry than the so-called male lead? When Lola told me about the booth earlier, she also said Nate had pulled a favor so Henry wouldn't get carded. Nate knew Henry wouldn't want to go to a campus party without them, and he didn't want Henry to be home alone. You don't want to leave Henry home alone, yet you put demands on an establishment to risk having their liquor license revoked because they sold alcohol to somebody under 21. You could have gone literally anywhere else simply to include Henry, but no. Circling back to the why is the narration so hung up over Henry business, as Lola and Anastasia meet up with the hockey players, Anastasia looks over and sees Henry talking with two pretty girls, and it's like, why are you so jealous over this? Why are we reading about this when Nate is supposed to be the actual love interest here? Nate shows up only to tell her not to drink alcohol with a head injury. She turns around and sees that he was also injured on the court, which is something Lola told her previously. He makes a joke that she made it look like so much fun. And again, despite the fact that Anastasia tells us that she's attracted to Nate and wants to be with him, this fact is also told to us in the most passive, boring way possible. Shoehorned in, if you will. She seriously had more reaction towards Henry talking with the two ladies. Chapter 12. Coach and Robbie immediately had to sit around the table analyzing the game while it was fresh in our heads. That's a bit I usually hate, especially after one when I want to celebrate with a beer or 10. Look, the reason why you're so great is because you take the time to analyze your game even when you did win. No matter how much you win, there is always going to be room for improvement. The fact that Nate is acting anxious for beer, do you want to know what this is called? Alcoholic. It seriously sounds like he's an alcoholic. This isn't cute or even remotely normal in any way. However, Nate says that he doesn't want to sit and hear Coach's play-by-play, yet not even 2 paragraphs later it admits that everything had to be perfect, that the team is already on the proverbial thin ice, even though they determined that it was sabotage from a rival school. Except, now that I'm thinking about it, why wasn't this already Nate's default state, to be perfect at every game? He had been given an offer to play for a professional team after college, but at literally any point that offer could be rescinded. 4 years is a long time for a professional team to wait, and there are so many college-level players who would love to join. However, As usual, my own commentary about all of this takes longer to cover than the actual book. After this, they go to a party. Reverse drinking game. Every time that these literal children go to a party, why don't you go learn a random factoid? And honestly, it seems so much healthier than this standard affair. At the nightclub, the narration screeches to a halt so that Nate can describe what these random background characters are doing. I don't care. Then, because this book is terrible, it takes an entire page of Anastasia and Lola to come over to the table. There isn't anywhere to sit, so Anastasia sits on JJ's lap, which makes Nate jealous. His jealousy aside, every single random background character seems to have more chemistry with Anastasia than the actual lead character. I am also begging the author to explain why Nate is so jealous and why he wants Anastasia so badly. Like, yeah, she's pretty, but she's straight up not that nice. He complained about Kitty's beauty being only skin deep, but fails to acknowledge that the same is true with Anastasia. Oh, but that would require him to think about this upstairs head, and we can't have that, I guess. Ugh. Nate asks her to dance and she agrees. On the dance floor, they're practically already banging. I am so freaking done with this book, and it's not even 1/3 of the way finished. 2 seconds later, Lola pops up and says that they're leaving. Despite the fact that it seems like Anastasia and Lola barely got there 5 minutes earlier, they cram themselves into an Uber and Nate bribes the driver to let them take the girls, despite the fact that I'm certain that it would have been cheaper simply for them to ride in a different car by themselves. I have no idea how they managed to transport Robbie and his wheelchair, but whatever. I don't care at this point. I kind of feel like the author dropped that into the novel before promptly forgetting about it. Anyway, because there is no room, Anastasia is sitting on Nate's lap, and he's obviously having a bit of a reaction. She tells him that she's also having a reaction and isn't wearing underwear again. Girl, do you need somebody to take you underwear shopping, or maybe show you how to do laundry? Thanks for listening to my Book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all of my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main Book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. Newly added to Patreon is to become a member without paying. You'll get access to the same things on Tumblr, but on Patreon. Supporters can have access to so many more Booksnarks starting at $1 a month. Also new is a 1-week free Patreon trial, so be sure to check that out. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just $10 per chapter. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of spicy short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys!